Dave Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez at the Lions Allen Park compound, and 3 days into training camp, Carlos, and we already have some big news on the Lions. They've made the big addition of Mike Daniels late Friday night, released Theo Riddick, longtime running back, here on Saturday morning, and let's just get into talking about the news here. I mean, you know, the Daniels signing is a nice signing. Very good player when healthy. Wasn't healthy last year. We'll see what he can add. The Riddick decision, you know, I think he always seemed to be the odd man out in this running back mix, but, you know, you still take a little bit of a risk by cutting him this early in training camp, and a guy that, you know, I mean, he's averaged more than 60 catches over the last 4 seasons, so there's certainly some value lost there.
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, he's been Stafford's favorite safety valve. I mean, by far. I mean, it was just always.
Golden Tate, but
yeah. Golden Tate too, yeah. I mean, but since he's not here. But yeah, I mean, those two guys definitely, you know, when Stafford's been in trouble, those are the guys he's been looked to. I think you saw Tate losing a step last year, you know, not being quite as elusive, breaking tackles. And, you know, Lions obviously want to run the ball up the middle a little bit more. Riddick doesn't fit that mold as much. But I am surprised just because they don't have a proven commodity, you know, as much as they might like Ty Johnson and I don't know who else is going to catch passes. I mean, Carry-On catches some.
Carry-On's going to catch a lot. Yeah.
Well, Theo's different. I mean, that's his thing.
Well, I think he was different a couple of years ago. He was a difference maker a couple of years ago when he had 80 catches. You know, he averaged a career low yards per catch last year. And I think the Lions' offense, it's going to look a little different this year. You know, the passing game for running backs, and I asked Zach Zenner about that today. He didn't really shed any light on it. But, you know, just the way that Darrell Bevell has done this in the past, I don't know that we will see running backs running as many routes as Theo did. You know, maybe there'll be a little bit more of the screen game. And, you know, I think Carry-On is the type of back that, you know, when you're in a 2-minute offense, Carry-On can play that role. You know, I thought the Lions should have used him there instead of Theo Riddick last year. And, you know, maybe, you know, third downs, maybe you still want Zach Zenner in, or maybe, you know, there's room for Ty Johnson if he wins that kick return job. I think there's some options that you have. The Riddick move, you know, I didn't expect it today because it's July still. You know, there's 6 weeks to go until training camp, and, you know, maybe you want to keep, you know, some insurance just in case. But I also didn't see much of a role for him on this team, or much of a way for him to make this team, frankly. I think we've sort of alluded to that and talked about that in the past.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that, what is it, almost $4 million in cap savings?
Yeah, well, I think it's $3.5 million or so, because he was due $3.2 million this year. He's still going to cost about $1 million against the cap. But yeah, they'd save some money, but they have plenty of money too. Before they signed Mike Daniels, and Mike Daniels haven't seen the full details of the contract yet, but, you know, it's going to cost about $8 million against the cap with some incentives. They had $24 million or $23 million, so it's not like they needed that.
Well, that's my question is, you know, it would make more sense, because you have that money, to keep Theo Riddick through training camp, just in case somebody gets hurt. I mean, if Carry-On gets hurt, if someone else, right, C.J. Anderson, whatever.
Yeah.
So are you doing it? Do they have another move in hand that they need that money available somehow? Or
no, I mean, look, the Lions have enough money that they can go out and, you know, make another big trade if they need to, and that would be, you know, regardless of what happens with Riddick. Yeah, I understand your point, and that was my first thought too, is that, you know, he's nice insurance to have, but look, let's be honest, you know, and I'm sure Bob Quinn tried to trade him, you know, but nobody's taken a running back at $3.2 million, and you do run the risk that he gets hurt, and therefore you're gonna, you know, you won't be able to recoup that salary cap money. He's had some wrist problems. It's not like he's been injury free in the past, so you do run the risk of having to pay that or carry that on your cap. So maybe the Lions just saw it as, you know what, look, we have our 4 running backs. It's going to be Carry-On Johnson, you know, C.J. Anderson, Zach Zenner, Ty Johnson. That'll be the group that they go into the season with, barring injury. And so, therefore, they just decided, hey, let's cut bait here. Let's move on. He's not going to fit in. So, you know, we always give credit to teams for moving on too early rather than too late. And, you know, I think this is, in the Lions' case, they sort of recognize that Theo wasn't going to be a part of this thing long term.
You know what, and I'll give the Lions a little bit of credit cutting them this early, actually. I mean, there is, you know, it's a good thing to do for the player because they get more chance to get into a camp with somebody else, get more, you know, established, whatever, get a rhythm. Probably end up in San Francisco with Martin Mayhew, I guess, but or in the NFC North, one of the two. But yeah, so I mean, it's tough, you know. I mean, I think everybody was surprised that it was Riddick this early.
Yep.
You know, so.
Well, look, I think
Riddick, I want to know what Stafford has to say about it.
Yeah, I think Riddick, you know, he probably still has a little bit left to offer some team out there. He wasn't making those wow plays in the open field last year like he was in previous seasons. So I don't view this as a huge loss. The Daniel signing, I think there's lots of potential there for that one. I mean,
Yeah.
Lions have a really good defensive line right now and a really deep defensive line. And if Daniels is healthy, you never know.
If any of them practice,
that's part of it. I mean, but with Daniels, you don't know if he's going to come back. But if he does, it's just another nice little piece up front for a team that has the makings of. I don't know if you'd say they're the best defensive line in the NFL, but they're going to be one of the top, handful, maybe top 5 defensive lines in the NFL based on the depth and the talent and the, moving pieces, I guess, that they have up front.
Do you hear that, Khalil Mack? Do you hear that?
Well, Khalil Mack's he's a linebacker. I don't know how I'd classify that.
Come on. He's an edge rusher.
I mean, the Vikings,
look,
in the NFC North, there's some really good defensive lines. I mean, the Vikings, you got Daniil Hunter on one side, Everson Griffin, even though he wasn't the same Everson Griffin last year. Obviously, they got some big bodies in the middle, so that's another really good defensive line. And,
Black and blue division.
Akeem Hicks, so depending on how you classify Khalil Mack, the Bears obviously have a good one. So there's some good defensive lines out there. I just think the Lions, we saw what impact Snacks had on that defensive front and that defense as a whole last year. And I think Daniels is just a guy that gives them more options. Now, I will say this. The Packers have been good about moving on from guys when it's time. Josh Sitton, even T.J. Lang, Greg Jennings. You could argue Brett Favre. I mean, they've really hit things at the right time when they've made some of those moves. But that said, from the Lions standpoint, it's a relatively risk-free move. You're paying him a lot of money. It sounded like there were a lot of teams out there that were willing to pay him money and therefore believe he has something left to give. But if it doesn't work out, it's nothing beyond 2019.
How motivated is he, do you think, to having been, I mean, he had plenty of suitors to want to stay in the division and, obviously going to have to deal with the Packers.
I think that was part of it. I think, as was explained to me yesterday, that he and Matt Patricia will get along well, that, they're both, about football. They both want to, that's sort of their thing. They're all about football when they get out there. So I think, you add in the fact that you get to play your old team a couple times a year, that you're getting $8 million guaranteed. Let's be honest, that's a big part of it too. I was told that there are some other teams willing to pay him more, but how much of that is guaranteed? How much of that is, so I think there are probably a lot of factors. But hey, look, from the Lions standpoint, it's a good addition. It's a relatively risk-free signing. If it works out, all of a sudden you're looking at this defensive line and you're going, there's not really a weak spot up there, and they're just going to keep rolling guys in one after another.
Yeah, you're seeing that. You're definitely seeing that right now with the identity of the team is, the defensive line is really good, should be really good, and the tight ends. I mean, they're being careful about how they're constructing that team. And Patricia, or that unit, Patricia mentioned today with Theo being gone, that's going to put more emphasis on the tight ends and how they contribute to the run game and all that other stuff. So. Going to be just seeing a lot of tight ends and
I was going to say not just the run game, but the pass game. He pointed to that as a group that can pick up some of that receiving slack, because it's not like Theo did a lot of running, but he was a weapon on third downs. And if you're going to use some of those tight ends a little bit more, you have guys that you trust at that position a little bit more. Certainly, they're going to take some of those reps. I know you're writing about the tight ends a little bit for Sunday, so make sure you read that on Freep.com. I'll be writing a little bit about the defensive line, so. A little bit of Freep synergy here, Carlos.
I wonder. The only thing is just the whole thing with the Theo Riddick thing. Not to belabor it too much, but just there is a lot of uncertainty with the running backs. To some extent, but especially with the tight ends, there's really no proven commodity there. I mean, you have some veteran players like James and Thomas, but there's no established oh man, these guys have done it. They've been successful doing it this way or whatever. There's rookies. They're all new, Jerome Cunningham's the only holdover. There's a lot of we're going to see what we get,
Yeah.
I just thought that was the interesting part of letting Riddick go without quite knowing exactly what you have.
Well, I think, but, in whatever, for camp, Hawkinson's looked pretty good so far. They think they know what they have in Hawkinson. They think they know that they have a pretty reliable player in Hawkinson, and same with Jesse James. And, again, no one thinks that either one of those guys is going to be Travis Kelce and catch 100 balls this year. But I think from the Lions standpoint, and the way they've built this team in a lot of ways, is that, they'd rather have, 6 or 8, really good players than 2 star players and a bunch of, fill-ins around them. So that's why, Jesse James is not, he's probably not going to be a Pro Bowler or anything like that. But at the end of the day, if he catches 45 passes and, he's playing 50% of the time and, you look up and you're like, oh, he had a pretty good year. And TJ Hawkinson does the same thing. And all of a sudden you're getting, 90 catches out of your tight end room. And then you look back at it and you say, wow, we doubled the production that we had last year at that position. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the Patriot Midwest way, is that they, they certainly, you need some really good players. That helps the team win in the NFL. And, Bob sort of talked about that after the season last year, that, you need some of those, those real difference makers. But, those guys aren't easy to come by, too. And so if you can get, some really good defensive linemen, and, you got 4 or 5 really good defensive linemen, but you don't have any great pass rushers. This team doesn't. That's the one thing this defensive line lacks. They don't have a 15 sack guy,
right,
but they have a bunch of really good defensive linemen for what they want to do. So that's a reason, for optimism.
Options. Patricia's always talking about options and having this guy and where you can move him around offensively and defensively, and it's not going to matter. Danny Amendola is going to lead the team in catches, so he's going to be the new Riddick / Tate.
We got a lunch bet on that one. That one will have to play out over the next 5 or 6 months, I guess. But we do have a lunch bet riding on that one. Maybe we'll have to.
Did my odds go up with Riddick gone now?
No, because I didn't think Riddick was going to make the team anyway. I just thought he was, trade bait. Essentially that.
You don't want to buy your way out of them?
Not at all.
Okay.
I'm going to win that one. Kerryon Johnson is going to. Kerryon Johnson was and is going to be the number 1 running back. CJ will probably be the backup, because they want a runner. Zenner is, he can block, he can play special teams. He's a really good Swiss Army knife to have. Rex Birkett type, guy, like, Patriot. If Ty Johnson wins the return job, maybe he's active, so you've got 4 backs. So Riddick was the odd man out. So, again, the timing of it, a little surprising. I didn't see it happening here in late July, but I don't think anyone should be shocked that Theo Riddick is not with the Detroit Lions in 2019.
You called it. You were right. Right again, Dave. Kudos to you.
No. I never wrote it. I never said that he was going to be cut. I think, we've always...
Yeah, he was on the bubble.
We've alluded to it. Yeah, we've certainly alluded to it, and it didn't come as much of a surprise.
He was no sure thing. Yeah.
So, the only sure thing is that Carlos and I will be back out here tomorrow, day 4 of Lions training camp. I think they'll be back in pads. Then they'll have a day off on Monday to sort of get their bearings back together. But we will be out here, as always, bringing you live coverage from Allen Park. For Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.